Have you ever stopped to reflect on what it truly means to age with purpose and dignity? How do we navigate loneliness, loss, and the unstoppable flow of time? This video isn't just about growing older, it's about embracing life's later chapters with strength and intention. Let us introduce you to Paul Thompson, a 62-year-old whose life journey has been marked by both joy and heartache. From the profound loss of his beloved wife to the quiet loneliness as his children pursue their own lives, Paul's story speaks to all of us. His challenges mirror those we may encounter as we walk through the seasons of life. Why should you stay with us through this video? Because Paul's story is more than personal, it's universal. His journey reflects the shared experiences of loss, growth, and renewal that define aging. You'll witness how Paul found ways to cope with grief, build new connections, and rediscover fulfillment even in solitude. Through him, you'll uncover valuable lessons on resilience and the beauty of unexpected relationships, like the one he forged with Laura, a woman who helped him face aging with courage and grace. Paul's journey also illuminates the difficult choices seniors often face, such as the decision to transition to a nursing home. You'll learn how to approach these life changes with confidence, openness, and a peaceful heart. By the time this video ends, you'll walk away with a renewed perspective on cherishing meaningful relationships, fostering independence, and shaping a life full of purpose as you age. Whether you're in your 60s, 70s, or beyond, Paul's story will inspire you to embrace every moment and overcome life's challenges with strength and optimism. Don't miss this opportunity to gain life-changing insights. If you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay connected. Your support means everything to us. If this video resonates, help us spread these vital lessons by liking and sharing. Drop a 1 in the comments to share your thoughts or your own stories. We're here to learn and grow together, crafting better videos for you every step of the way. Now, let's dive into the story. Retirement. I always thought it'd be my golden chapter, a time to slow down, kick back, and soak in the rewards of years of hard work. I had everything mapped out: the finances, the little side projects, the trips Sarah and I dreamed of. I was ready, or so I thought. Then, life did what it does best. It flipped the script. My timeline got cut short, and I found myself retiring earlier than planned. Financially, I was steady. Years of saving and careful spending had left me with a decent cushion. But money can't buy the things you don't plan for, like the hollow quiet that crept into my days. The house that once felt alive now felt hollow. My kids, Luke and Laura, had moved on, building their own lives and families. I was proud of them, no doubt about it, but the spaces they used to fill felt unbearably empty. I missed the little things: Luke crashing through the door after football practice, Laura curling up on the couch with a book. Those moments used to define my world. Now they were just memories echoing in empty rooms. And Sarah. She'd been gone a few years now, but the weight of her absence still lingered. Losing her was like losing my anchor. We'd faced everything together, from raising our kids to navigating life's ups and downs. Now I was adrift. One evening, the silence wrapped itself around me. I sat in the living room, the soft hum of the fridge, the only sound breaking the stillness. Even my old armchair seemed too big, too empty. I picked up the remote, flipped through channels, and put it down again. Nothing held my attention. Then the phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. It was Luke. His voice was rushed, a little frazzled. "Dad, I can't swing by tonight. Got a ton of work to finish," he said. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "No problem, son. You handle your stuff. I'm fine here," I said, masking the disappointment that knotted in my chest. When the call ended, the silence came crashing back, heavier this time. I stared at the phone for a while, wondering if I should call Laura, but I didn't. They both had their lives. I didn't want to be the dad who clings, who becomes a burden. The next day, John, my neighbor, stopped by. He's about my age, and we've always had a good rapport. He settled into the chair opposite me, his expression carrying a familiar heaviness. "Quiet here, huh?" he said, glancing around the room. "Yeah," I replied with a dry chuckle. "Too quiet." John nodded. "Same on my end. My wife's always busy, the kids too. You'd think we'd get used to it, right?" I didn't respond, just stared out the window at the swaying trees. His words struck a chord. "You ever think about what happens when it's just you?" he asked, breaking the silence. His voice was low, almost a whisper, but the question landed like a punch. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. The thought had already been haunting me. The idea of living in this big empty house with no one to talk to, no one to check in, it felt like staring into a dark tunnel with no light at the end. John sighed, a deep, weary sound. "You gotta find something, man. Something to fill the time, the space. Otherwise, this," he gestured vaguely around the room, "this will eat you alive." That conversation stayed with me long after John left. I found myself pacing the house, trying to outrun the quiet. I opened old photo albums, leafed through Sarah's favorite books, even dug out some of the kids' old toys from the attic. But none of it filled the void. The stillness was deafening. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the absence of purpose, of connection. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, John's words echoing in my mind. He was right. I needed something. A reason to get up every morning, something to reignite the spark that had dimmed. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself it was just a passing thought, but it lingered, gnawing at the edges of my mind. A few days later, Laura came over with her son, Mary. She had a basket of his favorite childhood dishes, perhaps hoping nostalgia would spark a longer visit. The moment Laura stepped inside, though, her urgency filled the room. "Dad, I'm just stopping by so Mary can see you for a bit." "I need to pick up Tim soon," she blurted out, her tone hurried, her eyes flicking around the room as if searching for an escape. Her words cut deep. I glanced at Mary and saw her unease. It broke me in a way I didn't think was possible. I forced a smile, masking the ache in my chest. "Go ahead, do what you need to do. I'll be fine here," I said, the words tasting hollow as they left my lips. Laura barely paused, her movements brisk, her visit fleeting. I stood at the door, watching them leave, the sound of their footsteps growing fainter until only silence remained. The house felt cavernous, the emptiness pressing down like a heavy blanket. My throat tightened as tears blurred my vision. I wasn't just alone, I was abandoned. That night, the same haunting question resurfaced, clearer and sharper than before. What will I do if I'm truly left alone? The thought was unbearable. I couldn't keep going like this, drifting through days that blurred into each other, swallowed by isolation. I had to act. 6 months passed, and slowly I rebuilt my life. I found a rhythm, one anchored in simple routines. I ate well, exercised regularly, and sought out new connections. My days, once so empty, became a patchwork of small joys. Playing chess, savoring quiet moments in the sun, and sharing laughter with friends. Solitude no longer felt like a sentence. It became a solace, a quiet companion that I learned to cherish. Luke and Laura still called often, their voices tinged with concern, always asking about my adjustment. "Dad, are you really okay?" they'd ask, their worry apparent. I reassured them every time. "I'm fine. There's nothing to worry about." Yet, I knew they struggled to understand. The peace I'd found was something only I could feel, something that couldn't be explained in words. But one afternoon, that fragile peace shattered. After a quiet lunch, I sat outside, soaking in the warmth of the sun, letting its gentle rays ease my mind. The phone rang, and I answered, greeted by Luke's voice, tight and trembling. "Dad, I've got bad news," he said, his words strained. "Mrs. Hope's been in a car accident. She's in the hospital." The news hit me like a blow to the chest, stealing my breath. My hands shook, and the phone nearly slipped from my grasp. "What? What happened? Is she okay?" My voice wavered, barely audible. Luke hesitated before replying, his voice unsteady. "I don't know much yet. I rushed here as soon as I heard. Do you want to come to the hospital?" The ground felt like it was crumbling beneath me. "Mrs. Hope, A steady presence, a person I deeply cared for, was now fighting for her life. Memories of our last conversation flooded my mind. I had smiled, told her to take care of herself. And now this. I hung up, my hands shaking as I dialed the nursing home to arrange transportation. My thoughts spiraled, unable to make sense of it all. How could something so devastating happen? Her smile was still etched in my mind, bright and full of life. It felt like it was teasing me, a reminder of how quickly everything could change. Fragility. I'd never truly understood the weight of that word until now. When I reached the hospital, I saw them. Luke and Laura stood outside the emergency room, their faces pale, eyes wide with fear. Laura clutched Luke's arm like it was the only thing keeping her upright. The sight of them made my stomach twist, dread creeping up my spine. Luke caught my eye and walked toward me, his steps heavy, like each one took every ounce of strength he had. He gently helped me sit down, his hands cold and unsteady. "Dad," he said, voice low and trembling. "They're doing everything they can, but it's bad. Really bad." Those words hit me like a hammer. I couldn't respond, couldn't think. My gaze drifted to the glowing red light above the surgery doors. It blinked rhythmically, indifferent to the storm raging inside me. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, hands clasped tightly. The air felt thick, suffocating. Every passing second stretched into a lifetime. I silently begged for news, for anything that could pull me out of this nightmare. When the doctor finally walked out, my heart stopped. His face was grim, his steps slow. I stood before I even realized it, my hands gripping the armrest of the chair for balance. "How is she?" The words tumbled out in a broken whisper, each syllable wrapped in desperation. He hesitated, his eyes heavy with fatigue and something deeper, pity. "Her condition is critical," he said softly. "We're doing everything possible, but..." His voice trailed off, leaving the unspoken truth to hang in the air. I stumbled back into the chair, the weight of his words crushing me. Luke placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm yet trembling. Laura sat down beside me, her silent tears falling steadily, soaking into her sleeves. Minutes turned into hours. Time had no meaning. I watched the doors, willing them to open, praying for a miracle. Every so often, a nurse or a doctor would rush by, their footsteps echoing in the cold, sterile hallway. But no one stopped. No one brought answers. Then a nurse emerged, pushing a bed. My breath caught in my throat as I saw her, Mrs. Hope, my wife, my rock. She looked so small, so fragile, almost unrecognizable. The color had drained from her face, her chest rising and falling in shallow, labored breaths. I stood, my legs unsteady, and reached for her hand. It was ice cold, the chill seeping into my bones. I held it tightly, as if my grip alone could anchor her to this world. "Mrs. Hope," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Please, stay with me. You can't leave now. Not like this." Her eyelids fluttered, just for a moment, and I felt a flicker of hope. But her gaze was distant, her eyes barely opened before they closed again. A single tear escaped, carving a path down her pale cheek. The sight shattered me. I sank to my knees beside her bed, my forehead pressed against her hand. "Please," I begged, my voice thick with tears. "You're my everything. I can't do this without you. Please don't go." The silence around us felt deafening. Even Luke and Laura didn't speak. They stood nearby, their faces etched with pain, their presence a quiet support I couldn't bring myself to acknowledge. Night fell, and I refused to leave her side. I stayed there, holding her hand, whispering words only she could hear. I told her about our first date, our long walks by the river, the nights we spent talking until dawn. I reminded her of our promises, of all the things we still had to do. As the first light of morning crept through the windows, her eyes fluttered open again. Her lips moved, forming words so faint I had to lean in close to hear. "Live well, for us," she murmured, her voice barely more than a breath. Her hand squeezed mine weakly, then loosened. Her chest rose once more, then stilled. In that instant, everything stopped. The world seemed to fall away, leaving only a hollow silence. I clung to her hand, my heart shattering into pieces too small to ever fit back together. Mrs. Hope, I choked, my voice barely audible. Please come back, please. But she was gone. The room felt unbearably empty, a void that swallowed everything. The air, once filled with the soft hum of machines and faint murmurs, now seemed colder, heavier. She had been the center of my world, the one who made everything brighter, who gave my life meaning. Without her, it felt like the sun had set forever. Luke placed a hand on my shoulder again, his grip stronger this time, as if to keep me grounded. But even he couldn't pull me from the abyss opening beneath me. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, holding her hand, replaying her last words over and over in my mind. Live well. For us, it was a command, a plea, and a gift all at once. But how could I live well without her? How could I face a world so empty, so quiet? The answer didn't come. Not then. All I could do was sit with the pain, the loss, and the unbearable silence that would now define my days. The world had turned colder, harsher, a relentless shadow pressing down on me. Days passed in a fog, each one heavier than the last, wrapped in an unshakable darkness. Joy felt like a distant echo, peace an unreachable shore. Grief, a suffocating presence, clung to me, refusing to let go. Kind words from others meant to console only deepened the void, making my solitude more profound. Life in the nursing home blurred into monotony. Without her, time felt hollow, each hour stretching endlessly, devoid of purpose. My friends, the other residents, they noticed. Their eyes betrayed what they couldn't say aloud: sadness, pity, helplessness. They lingered near, offering quiet companionship, but their presence was a pale comfort against the gaping wound inside me. When you reach a certain age, losses stop being just moments of sorrow. They become missing pieces of yourself, irreplaceable fragments of your soul. No amount of distractions or reassurances could mend that kind of emptiness. Luke and Laura visited often, their children's laughter ringing like distant chimes in my heavy silence. I longed to draw strength from their innocent joy, but my heart remained locked, unyielding to their warmth. I wore a smile, a fragile mask to ease their worry, but inside, my grief built walls no love could breach. The silence between us deepened, echoing with the absence of Mrs. Hope. One day, Luke sat beside me, his brow furrowed with concern. "Dad," he said gently, "Mrs. Hope wouldn't want you like this. Please try to let the sadness go." His words, tender yet sharp, sliced through me. How could he understand the depth of this loss? How could anyone? "Luke," I whispered, my voice unsteady, "there are wounds words can't reach. Losing someone you love with every fiber of your being, it feels like the earth itself has crumbled beneath your feet." He held my hand, his grip firm yet soft, as if trying to anchor me. "You still have us," he said, his tone pleading. "We're here, always." I nodded, appreciating his love but knowing it couldn't fill the void. "I know, son," I replied quietly, "but some emptiness is too deep for anyone else to understand." A few days later, wandering through the garden, I noticed a new resident. His face was etched with sorrow, his eyes heavy with the same loneliness that weighed on me when I first arrived. I recognized that pain instantly. Slowly, I approached, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Would you like some company?" I asked softly. He nodded, his gratitude unspoken but clear. We walked in silence, the quiet of the garden enveloping us. No words were exchanged, yet none were needed. In that stillness, we found a mutual solace, a quiet acknowledgement of shared loss. Two souls, weathered by time, finding comfort in each other's presence. That night, lying in bed, memories of Mrs. Hope filled my mind. Her voice, her touch, her laughter. They were fragments of a life that now felt so far away, yet they remained the most precious treasures I held. The ache was still there, but for the first time, it felt just a little lighter. Maybe, I thought, that was enough for now. Her passing had left a void, but it also imparted a lasting truth. Life is shaped by the connections we form. Whether with family, friends, or fleeting acquaintances, these relationships are the threads that weave meaning into our days. They anchor us in a world that often feels transient and uncertain. Without them, life becomes unbearably hollow. The morning after her passing, I stood in the garden, the sun's warmth on my face, a sharp contrast to the cold emptiness inside. In that stillness, I understood a profound truth. While nothing lasts forever, the love we share leaves an indelible mark. It lingers, providing strength during life's storms, a reminder of the moments that mattered most. That love, enduring beyond time, is what gives our lives depth and meaning. The great Japanese author Haruki Murakami once reflected on time's quiet theft, how it sneaks up on us, leaving us older, marked by the passage of years in ways we barely notice until it's undeniable. Aging, he observed, isn't a gradual process we fully comprehend. It's a quiet shift, catching us off guard. One day, you look in the mirror and see the subtle lines of time etched into your face, the first gray hairs signaling that youth has slipped away. And then, you find yourself treated differently, called sir or ma'am. The world reminding you of a truth you can no longer ignore. You're no longer young, and with that realization comes a bittersweet acceptance. The weight of years settles on you, and even the most comforting reassurances feel hollow. Yet in those moments of clarity, I've come to see that it's not about fearing the passage of time. It's about cherishing the relationships and connections that have brought light into my life. In the end, these bonds are what make us truly human, offering understanding, comfort, and love when we need it most. Even in the quietest of moments, they remind us that we've lived, loved, and shared something lasting. As I lay there, Mrs. Hope's presence felt closer, her love a quiet beacon in the darkness. And for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of peace, a reminder that even in loss, love remains, always. In those quiet moments, something special happens. Silence becomes a sanctuary, a place where you hear your thoughts and feel the beat of your heart. The world fades away, and all that remains is the rhythm of your own life. It's a strange kind of peace, this solitude. Alone, yes, but never lonely. There's freedom in this stillness, a comfort in knowing you don't need anyone else's approval. Their judgments, their worries, don't matter anymore. You start trusting yourself more than the voices around you. Time moves quickly, sometimes unnoticed. As the years go by, the noise of the world begins to fade, not because there's nothing left to say, but because silence speaks louder than words. People start to understand that. Slowly, we realize that we don't need to explain ourselves all the time. How many truly understand your journey? Few, if any. Sometimes, it feels like no one really listens. But maybe that's okay. Comforting words often hide the deeper truths we aren't ready to face. So, we embrace silence. In that stillness, you find clarity. You hear your heart in ways you never could before. Life isn't easy. Struggles can feel endless, and sometimes failure feels inevitable. But with each challenge, you begin to accept what you can't control. There's peace in that acceptance. As long as you've given your best, you stand tall. No shame. The respect you gain is quiet, humble, not born from ego, but from grace. You see your worth, and it doesn't need to be loud. As time passes, you notice changes within yourself. They're subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. The world shifts around you, but you've grown, stronger, wiser, more aware of the beauty in life, even when it's fleeting. Old age is a tough teacher. It reshapes you. It deepens your understanding of life. And most of all, it changes how you see love. I once thought love was simple. It was a promise between two people, holding hands through the years, growing old together, a bond that nothing could break. But over time, I've seen the truth. Love isn't always forever. Relationships come and go, like flowers that bloom brightly then fade. Life moves fast. The past, present, and future blur together. You start to realize that people you thought were irreplaceable have changed or drifted away. Even memories, once so vivid, begin to lose their color over time. The more you live, the more you understand that life is a beautiful mess. It's a mixture of joy and sorrow. There are moments when you want to hold on to things, but the truth is, They're not meant to stay the same. Some things lose their shine, and all you can do is let them go. Life doesn't ask for permission to change, it just does. People will disappoint you, and yes, you'll disappoint yourself. It's hard to accept, but we often give too much to others, only to feel empty. They start to take your love for granted, expecting it without question. I've learned, sometimes the hard way, that I need to protect my heart. I need to be kinder to myself, to step back when necessary, and not give more than I can handle. As time goes on, you begin to see that disappointment isn't just a passing feeling. It becomes a constant companion. The more you give, the more vulnerable you are to being let down. But there's something beautiful in that vulnerability. It reminds you that you're still alive, still hoping for better things. And as you grow, you realize it's foolish to place all your hopes in one thing. Hope can be powerful, but it also leaves room for deep disappointment. That's when you learn the delicate balance of hope and acceptance. There are times to push forward and times to step back and let things unfold. The key is balance. When you find it, you stop worrying so much about the outcome. What truly matters is how you carry yourself, how you move forward with grace, no matter what comes your way. In the end, after all the love, the loss, the hope, and the disappointment, one truth stands clear. The only way to avoid failure is to rely on yourself. The support of others is comforting, but the true strength lies within. When the world feels uncertain, you'll realize just how strong you truly are. This is the moment when you rise, not because you have to, but because you always had the strength inside. As we reach the end of this reflection, think about the lessons you've learned. Life teaches us so much about love, loss, hope, and the strength we carry. What lesson resonated with you today? How will it change the way you move forward? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share one lesson you've learned and how it will influence your actions in the comments below. Your insight could inspire someone else. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment, like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.